Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's event. My name is Gail Roy, and I'm the Library Director at Northern Maine Community College. And I'll be co-hosting today's event with Elizabeth Phillips, the Library Director at Washington County Community College. This event is being recorded. We'll use chat for questions, and we ask that you remain on mute until the discussion section or until you'd like to speak. It's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today. Hannah Longley is a licensed clinical social worker with NAMI Maine, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and she's currently their Director of Community Programs. Born and raised in Maine, she received her bachelor's degree in psychology from Wheaton College and a master's degree in clinical social work from Boston College. Hannah has worked in crisis services in various roles throughout her career and has provided services and support to law enforcement agencies. Hannah has conducted psychoeducational and crisis intervention trainings for a variety of populations. Prior to coming to NAMI Maine, Hannah was a psychological health coordinator for the Maine Army National Guard, where she provided assessment and referral services for soldiers and their families. She is a member of the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation and is an instructor for group debriefings. As a certified mental health first aid instructor through the National Behavioral Health Council, she helps adults, youth, veterans, and first responders. Welcome, Hannah, and thank you for joining us today. And now I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much. So as Gail said, I am Hannah Longley. I am the Director of Community Programs with NAMI Maine. For those of you who are not familiar with NAMI, NAMI is actually the largest grassroots organization in the country, which is really exciting as a social worker to get excited about things like that. But it's pretty cool. It was founded by two moms who had adult children who developed a severe and persistent mental illness. During that time, there was not a lot of support or advocacy, and there was a huge stigma that surrounded mental health challenges of any sort. And so when your child is diagnosed with a physical health condition, typically people show up, they offer you pastorals and support and all of that. But what they found was that a lot of people disappeared. And so they really wanted to bond together, and they ended up, again, growing NAMI into a huge grassroots organization to provide support for individuals and their family members who are living with a mental health challenge, as well as advocacy and then education to really combat that stigma and increase understanding and awareness. We offer a number of psychoeducational trainings or just trainings that we offer throughout the state in schools and in various locations, businesses. We also provide a number of advocacy resources, either individually or also at the State House. And we have affiliates that are located across the state. And so I really do want to throw that out there, is that we're able to offer a number of support groups for individuals and family members who are supporting someone who has a mental health challenge or a mental health concern occurring. So please feel free. Our website is listed on the chat box. And so please feel free to reach out to us where we have a number of resources that are available and services. So that's NAMI in a nutshell, a quick little nutshell of it. But today I was asked to talk about stress and anxiety and the impact that it can have on people. And I really tried to make this as open as possible. So if you have questions, feel free to unmute yourself. If you have something to add to what I'm saying, or if you don't feel comfortable unmuting yourself, just add it into the chat box. So that way I can make sure that I make this as applicable to you guys as possible. But as Joe was saying, I do a lot of work in the stress world, in the crisis world, as it relates to critical stress. And it's important to keep in mind that there is actually good stress and then there is distress. And so we have something that's called eustress. And so that is just, it's good stress. It helps us to be able to focus when we have a test, or really it's from basic wiring in our DNA There was a time where we did not have, or we lived in a cave and we had to be careful that a saber-toothed tiger was going to jump out at us, and we had to be prepared for survival responses. It provides us a certain level of safety. It provides us with a level and an ability to focus. When stress starts to impact our ability to focus fully, or our ability to sleep or to eat or to engage in relationships and conversations, um, or to really get through what it is that we need to get through, is when we start to worry about it and we start to separate it out into distracts. Oftentimes when we go through stressful situations, for a lot of people, is we can have an event that occurs. And for some of us, it will be an immediate stress reaction that will occur. And then some people will maintain for a period of time and then have a stress reaction and response. And both are completely normal. And I think that that's something that's really important to keep in mind. It is normal to have stress responses. It's completely normal, it's completely understandable. A lot of what ends up happening, depending on the degree that our stress response is happening or our anxiety level is occurring, is that our brains and our bodies are wired to respond to it. So when we start to experience stress, we start to actually shift the part of our brain that we are in, and our central nervous system responds to it. And I people think I'm a dorky brain person, but in all reality, it's really important that we understand all of that, so we understand what's happening with us and we understand what's happening with the other people that are in our lives. So when we have a stress response, we leave the front part of our brain, our thinking part of our brain, and we go to our survival part of our brain. In our survival part of our brain, we have fight, flight, freeze. People are just wired to it. I think people feel badly for my children because I use them as examples from time to time. But we just have a natural wiring for it. And I can see both of my children, they have two separate wirings for it. My son will do an automatic freeze when he gets caught or when he's in trouble in some sort of way. You'll see him just kind of freeze. My daughter is a feisty little thing. She has an automatic wiring for fight, and she doesn't necessarily hit you, but she gets pretty feisty with it. And so understanding where our natural wiring is and our natural responses can help us a lot when we start to have a stress response too, because we understand where we naturally go. As much as I like to blame a lot of attributes of my husband with my children, I know my daughter's fight response comes from me, and that's my wiring too. So I have to keep that in check when I start to get stressed. My automatic response is going to be to start to get a little bit feisty, just like my daughter. Um, but when that happens, we're leaving the front part of our brain, and everything that's are controlled in that part of our brain are things like our emotional regulations. We're going to have a harder time regulating our emotions, our impulse control. So we may say or do things that we would not necessarily do. We may not think things through because our judgment, the part of our judgment, is impacted in there. And see what else. And our organization, our ability to have structure, our word retrieval and our word processing, so communication gets really difficult. That's why when you get into a really escalated state, you start sputtering sometimes and you can't think of the word. Why sometimes with my two children, when I get really frazzled, I call them the wrong name. And honestly, sometimes it's the dog's name. But we all do that. It's a natural reaction and response when we start to get escalated. So we leave that part of our brain where we're going to have difficulty communicating. We're going to have difficulty in thinking things through. We're going to have difficulty problem solving because that's just not the part of the brain we're in. On top of it, we also, our whole physical being will have a reaction and a response. And that's really important to keep in mind too. Because when you have that physical reaction and response, oftentimes we end up overlooking it or thinking it's caused by something else. But really when that happens, our body will be preparing to get into that fight or flight mode. And so it will pump all of the blood out to your extremities. So when it pumps it all out to your extremities, then you're going to have great gross motor skills for survival. So you'll be able to run and you'll be able to swing, but you may have a hard time holding a pen. So if you're going in for an exam or writing, trying to write a paper and your anxiety is really high, you may have a hard time coordinating and writing things down neatly. And that's something to think about, and something to be aware of. What's going on with my physical being when this is happening? That happens because our heart starts to beat a little bit faster to speed up the circulation of our blood and to pump it out. And our lungs are going to start to oxygenate a lot. That was a really hard word to pronounce, and I just mispronounced it, which is really embarrassing because you are recording it. But it's going to pump in a lot more oxygen. It has to be able to. We have to be able to absorb it to get it all out to our extremities. Um, and to really make it so that you can be able, again, to be in that survival mode. What's also really interesting is, and I think it's really interesting, is if you think about the way our bodies are made, everything underneath our rib cage is wired for, or is what we need for immediate survival. And so that's what's going to kind of kick into overdrive to be able to get it ready and to get us ready to be able to run or to freeze or whatever it is that we need to do to survive in those situations. Everything that's not underneath your rib cage is one of two things. It either clamps right up and stops, and so you lose your appetite, and you may struggle with eating. You may not feel like eating. You may have a gag response with that. And honestly, your bowel movements and your bladder movements may start to slow down. Or on the opposite end of it, you may be craving food and wanting to take food in constantly because it's pumping in and pumping through you. And you may end up going to the restroom a lot more frequently. That's why uh, I joke for anyone who is watching this and planning on going into the social work field. There are things they don't tell you about when you're going to go into the mental health field. One of them is the amount of times you're going to talk about other people's bathroom habits. Because it does, it has a big impact on our physical health. We're wired for that, again, for that survival part of it. When all of that happens and you go into the survival part of your mode, or survival mode, you're going to have chemicals that get dumped into your system in order to be able to prepare you for that. Your body's going to start looking for a threat to be able to protect itself from. We lose our peripheral vision when we are in that survival mode, and the more stress we get, because again, just for basic physical survival, we want to be able to hyper focus on whatever we perceive that threat being. And so our bodies dump a whole bunch of chemicals into it. Forgot to add our memory when we're leaving our frontal part of our brain. That's why you may struggle. You may study really hard for a test, and then you go to take it and you're very stressed out about it. And you can't remember stuff anymore, but you knew it this morning. That's what's going on, is that you're having that stress response and you're leaving that part of your brain. And so when you're having those chemical dumps going into your body, oftentimes it'll end up sitting and your muscles, again, your muscles prepared for some sort of big survival exercise to have to happen. So it'll end up settling in there. You also, by nature, we all kind of clench and prepare ourselves for something. Are we going to, you're going to prepare yourself for a hit. That's why they actually say when you get into a car accident, if you didn't know you were going to get hit, you have less injuries oftentimes because your body's more relaxed, which is a really weird thing to think about. But again, our bodies are preparing for things. And so when we talk about stress and we talk about anxiety, people always focus on, well, I feel anxious or I feel stressed. And we overlook the fact that you're probably going to have trouble focusing too, which you may not realize. You're going to have trouble making decisions. You're going to have trouble remembering things. One of the big things that I always work with people after some sort of critical event when I am speaking with them is to let your family know you're probably going to forget to take out the garbage. I'm not saying use this as an excuse and don't take out the garbage, but those are things to keep in the back of your mind, is that you may have trouble remembering things. Things like making a decision about dinner when you're really stressed out. People struggle with just basic, like, do I want to make pasta or do I want to make chicken for dinner? It can be really difficult and overwhelming. And without knowing where that's coming from, people can start to panic a little bit, just wondering what's happening. But really, again, you're having a stress response and you're not in that part of your brain. Um, and so just being mindful of all of the different ways it can come out. Another really common reaction that people have is that you're not quite sure what's going on with you. You don't feel quite right. You get these chemicals that are dumping into your body and you don't feel that good. In all honesty, when you're having stress responses or you're having a prolonged stress response, our body's not wired for that. You may not start to feel that good. People get angry and irritable. And again, it's not necessarily an excuse to be grouchy at home, but it's something to be aware of. And if there's any gentlemen who are watching this or anyone who has a gentleman in their life, that's one of the most common reactions that men have, is not necessarily saying I'm anxious or I'm nervous or I'm sad. It's they're cranky, and they're grumpy. And so just being aware of that, because when you combine it all together and you kind of think about what I just said about what's physically going on in your body and what's going on with your thought process and the impact it can have, um, people don't necessarily want to reach out at that point. But what I really encourage you guys to do is to be mindful of that and think about that. If people all of a sudden have lost their energy and seem to be struggling with their decisions and they're grumpy, and they're not feeling that good, have a conversation with them about what's happening and what's going on and what we can do to support them. And so that's just one of the biggest things that I want to encourage. If you're worried about someone, just have a conversation, and have a non-judgmental conversation. That's one of the big things that I think, this is anecdotally, this is according to Hannah to a certain extent, but that's one of the big things is that we almost feel like people have to justify their stress level or people have to justify or we want to compare it, one person to the other. All of our feelings and our experiences are completely valid and you don't have to justify it to anyone else. And if you're supporting someone who's having a difficult time, they don't have to justify it to you either. And that's something that's really important to keep in mind. There is such power in just validating someone's experiences and what someone's feeling, and just saying, I'm sorry, that really stinks, and just being there and being present. And so just keeping that all in mind. One of the other, we kind of talked about the physical or the impact of stress. Um, One of the big things that can be difficult is that when we're experiencing it and all of a sudden you realize that you're in the middle of it, what do, right? And so there are things that we know that we can do, actual concrete things that we can do to support ourselves and then to support other people. One of the biggest things that I always promote, and it's kind of become a running joke around first responders when they have a critical incident and I follow up with them, they're like, we know, Hannah, drink twice as much water as you think or we think we need to drink. Because stress in and of itself, the chemicals that get dumped into you, dehydrates your body. So it leads itself to just naturally physically dehydrating you. On top of the fact, when you think about the basic level of stress and the stress responses that I was talking about, if you are in an imminent survival situation and that saber-toothed tiger is chasing you don't have time to stop and drink. So if you just take a minute and you drink some water, that is automatically telling your brain and your body it's bad, not probably not good. There's something going on, but that I'm not in an imminent survival situation because I have time to stop and drink. And so drinking lots of water, taking deep breathing or deep breathing exercises is amazing. They've started to do a lot of research on meditation and mindfulness exercises and deep breathing exercises. And what they've found is that when we implement it in school systems, and this is just in basic school systems, all of the kids' standardized test scores increase and go up, and all of their behavioral incidents and reports start to go down. So if you think about what we said about this part of your brain, the more we can take those deep breathing and take those moments and really reflect and regulate, literally regulate our central nervous system and pull it back to this part of our brain, kids have demonstrated that you're able to think more, you're able to remember more, you're able to learn more, you're able to control your impulses more. And so it's pretty amazing just the science that we're able to see around just simple exercises like taking deep breaths and guided relaxations. There's a lot of different apps that you can download onto your phone in order to be able to walk you through it. And there's different apps for different populations. So you can just do a guided meditation if you want a guided meditation one. You can do just basic deep breathing ones. Um, my husband will probably tell me his favorite are colored breathing exercises where you breathe in one color and you breathe out another color. For people who may not want to have something on their phone that says deep breathing exercises, they actually have tactical breathing exercises. So I do that a lot with military veterans that I worked with, or law enforcement, where they're like, oh, can't have deep breathing exercises because somehow that's not okay. But we'll download tactical breathing apps onto their phone, so they'll do those breathing exercises. But it sounds a whole lot cooler that way, in their world at least. So just taking those deep breathing exercises. Also really important, a lot of science has started to come out as it relates to promoting positive chemicals that we release in our body. Serotonin, I think, is a chemical that we all know we naturally produce. For people who struggle with depression, they oftentimes take an SSRI to increase the serotonin. What we know and what we've learned is that about 80 to 90% of your serotonin is actually produced in your gut, in your stomach, based on what you eat. So I'll say this sometimes, and people will say that's why the meat lovers pizza makes me so happy, and that's actually not true, because it's all based on plant-based food. So I always say, have the meat lovers pizza if that's what you love, but throw in a salad on the side once a day, or at least increase some of your plant-based food intake. They've started to do and had some positive results on basic preliminary research of treating depression with probiotics. I don't know what the dose is or anything like that. You can look it up yourself, but they're starting to make progress on this and recognizing where our serotonin is actually coming from. So be mindful of what you eat. Some of us may automatically go for a whoopie pie when they're stressed out, and that's okay. But again, throw in some healthy plant-based foods with it as well. So drinking, eating, one of the other big things is actually the fire service who originally did this research for us, and we've been able to replicate it in numerous other studies. Um, but what they found is that if you have chronic sleep deprivation, then your body decreases its ability to produce serotonin, but it also decreases its ability to make dopamine receptors. Dopamine is another chemical that we naturally produce in order to combat depression and to help to regulate our mood and elevate our mood. And the receptors, I call them the baseball gloves. They reach out, they grab it, they pull it in so you can use it. And so what they found is that chronic sleep deprivation, your serotonin production goes down, but also your dopamine receptors go down. And so that will lend itself to you struggling more with your mental health, with stress, and with a depressed mood. And so just make sure that you sleep really well. If you're going through a stressful situation, or if you go through a critical situation, in all honesty, you get into a car accident or if something really stressful ends up occurring, you want to make sure you have a full REM cycle, at least one full REM cycle every single time you sleep for the first about week that you go. So no, it's super popular, no naps unless you can sleep for at least 3 hours. Because you need to have that full cycle to go through it. And what they found is that ensuring that you have full REM cycles and you sleep through a full REM cycle, it decreases the likelihood of developing long-term impact on your mental health, such as post-traumatic stress injury. Um, in reality, a minimum of 6 hours a night is ideal, but what's really optimal is at least 8 hours a night of sleep. I say that laughing as a working mother and all of that because I can't tell you the last time I actually slept 8 hours uninterrupted, but it's always a goal of mine. And to try and make sure that you can have those normal sleep cycles and you can try and get through it and get a healthy level of sleep in there. Right now, too, one of the things that's happening with the social distancing is we're really using technology for wonderful things. Like today, we're able to gather, in all sorts of locations and come together and have conversations and discuss. But technology can also have some difficulties with it in the fact that we are constantly getting bombarded 24 hours a day, where we don't necessarily have the same boundaries we did before, either with news cycles. I mean, today's election day. That's one of the big things. We've all been bombarded 24 hours a day with the election for the last few months. It can really start to take a toll. We're also, there's no real way to limit, I want to say, put some boundaries sometimes where uh, some of us may be older than others and some of us may not have had any sort of technology in our home except for, the rotary phone when we were little. And you could just take that off the hook. You didn't have as many TV stations. And so you were able to set some limits for yourself when you went home and there wasn't the constant expectation or constant flood of being sure that you're up to date on all of the news, not only just all of the news internationally, but nationally, and then on your state and your local level. And then there's the celebrity news you have to keep up on. And then there's the news of what's going on in everyone's life. Um, I'll use a personal example. I have a friend who just had a baby. I had no idea they were even pregnant. So I called and said, congratulations. I had no idea this was going on. When thinking we had a closer relationship, I said, I'm sorry I missed this. I feel awful. And I thought I posted it on Facebook. I'm not on there apparently as much as everyone else, but I literally I missed that announcement because it was all just put on Facebook. But keeping that in mind is it's okay to shut stuff off. It's okay to take a break. And actually that's something that we're really recommending for folks right now is that we want to stay up to date on all of the news and we almost start to feel compelled to do it. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to snooze people on your Facebook feed, the feature that I just learned existed. But it's okay to do that. It's okay to not follow every news source. I've had over the last week, I've had to meet with a lot of folks who are really struggling with the election results on both sides of the aisle, which I found really interesting. But a lot of people are struggling with that. And what I told all of them is it's okay to follow the news, but set times for yourself. Either take a 30-minute news cycle, watch it from 6 to 6:30 and that's your news for the day and that's okay. But keeping it on and bombarding yourself 24 hours a day with news, it can really start to overwhelm and really start to increase panic that you can be experiencing because there's no break. Um, and so with that, it's not just with the news, it's not just the social media, it's with people too. And that's one of the things that I really encourage. We all have people in our life who are incredibly supportive and no matter what you're going through, they're there for you and they're going to support you and they're going to love you and they're going to nurture you. And then we have people in our lives who we may love dearly, but you call and tell them you had a bad day and it turns into a competition of, oh, me too, let me tell you about mine. That's not necessarily what we need in that moment. Or we have people in our lives who may say, that's nothing. That is not a bad day. You're fine. Suck it up. No, suck it up, buttercup, right? Rub some dirt on it and keep walking. That's not helpful either. And so when you're reaching out for support, reach out to the right people. And it's okay if you're having a rough time to say, nope, I'm good. You're not who I really need to be communicating with right now. It's okay to do that. It's okay to limit your interaction with people for the benefit of your mental health. And so keeping that in mind, um, exercise, that's another thing that we can do. If you go to a stressful event and you're really stressful, I'm not saying run a marathon or you have to join a CrossFit gym, but if you're feeling some additional anxiety, do some light cardio. I always say this laughingly because I have made it abundantly clear to the law enforcement agencies that I work with. If you find me on a running path that's a secondary crime scene, I would never willingly be there because I don't exercise. And so just being mindful of though, when my anxiety is amped up, I go out and I go for a walk. And it's not like a big long walk or anything, but it's some light cardio. For me, it's like cardio. For everyone else, it's just really going to the mailbox and getting their mail. But regardless, it's getting out and it's getting some exercise and it's getting some movement. We do know that that promotes positive chemicals getting released into your body. So again, those positive chemicals, but it also helps to start working those stress chemicals that got released in out of your body and out of your muscles and out of your joints. And so it starts to have some long-term impacts, positive impacts in your mental health. Doing it outside if at all possible. I know it's kind of yucky, at least here, and gray outside, but still trying to do it outside whenever possible helps to promote vitamin D coming into your system. And again, you're out, you're getting fresh air, and getting that break of what's happening. Um, and the last thing is that I think a lot of us have lost our hobbies, or we've altered our hobbies in some sort of way, or frankly, for a lot of people that I've talked to, they've just forgotten what they were. If you're home all the time, you forget that you used to enjoy going into a spare room and sewing. Or you used to enjoy gardening because you're just there all the time. You forget about those things. You forget if you're in school, for you guys who are in school right now, you're reading all the time, right? It's one of the big things that I always looked forward to at every break when I was in school is that I could read a book that I enjoyed. And depending on what my semester was like, I picked some of the most mindless, out there books that I could possibly read, but you forget that that's something that you enjoy. And so get back on with that. Like read a book if you enjoy reading a book. You may not have a lot of time, but do that. If you just need something mindless, pick something mindless. During these times of high stress, I find people start watching a lot more serious films and movies and stuff like that. If you enjoy it, great. But if you're feeling very overwhelmed, it's okay. And I'm giving you permission to turn on The Office. And that's really mindless comedy, right? Turn on something mindless that you can just laugh to. And that's something that we lost sight of too. Um, is that just laughing, putting ourselves in a position where you just laugh so hard that your stomach hurts. I can't, there's a lot of people I'll ask when the last time you did that, and they can't remember. Find someone who's going to make you laugh so hard your stomach hurts, or watch a movie that it will make your stomach hurt. You're laughing so hard. And so just finding those ways to still let loose and give yourself permission to do that. I had someone say, I wish that I could be as carefree and as happy as kids. There was a really powerful statement someone else made. They're like, well, because you care what people think now. I mean, look at them. They're just like yelling and running and screaming on their way to the swings, and they don't care what anyone thinks of them or if they fall down or anything like that. They're just free and they're just enjoying themselves, not caring. We've lost sight of that with all of this. We've lost sight of just what's going to make us happy and give us, set aside time. It is okay. Set aside time and say, I'm going to go and I'm going to go swing on a swing set. And I don't care what anyone thinks, even if I'm 40 years old. I'm going to go do this. And so find those moments of joy. And I feel like I just talked really fast and I threw a lot of information out there, but I was trying to be mindful of the time. Does anyone have anything to add? Any questions?
I'd like to ask if you would share with me later via email some links for the apps you recommended. That tactile breathing, the color, like some of these sounded really good. And
Tactical breathing is the name of the app. For a lot of them, you can only get them on one phone or the other. And I'm going to be honest, I'm completely cheap. So I hate paying for apps on my phone. So I literally will go in and I will type in coloring's one that's a really good activity. You can't always do it with colored pencils and stuff, but you can just go in and type in like free coloring app and download it right to your phone. There's a puzzle one too. That I downloaded because again, it's just kind of a mindless. For me, when I think about it, it's a mindless exercise to a certain extent, but you still have to focus a little bit. And so it starts to bring me back into this. And so I do puzzle exercises, or not puzzle exercises, but puzzle games on my phone just to kind of refocus myself and start to shift my thinking. But again, shift it so that I have to use this part of my brain to do it. But if you just type in like breathing exercises or meditation apps, and again, I don't remember which ones are free and which ones aren't, but I would do like free mindfulness exercises that you can do. There's some that you can do a gratuity journal, and a lot of it, people, we kind of, again, we lose sight of what's important. They find doing our meditation exercises and then practicing gratitude daily actually rewires your brain. And so there's actual science in it saying it's rewiring your brain and it's getting you back into the frontal part of your brain, but it's also helping you to focus. It's helping you to feel better. And they show it in your brain scans. Well, not necessarily yours, but in brain scans, they show it.
I think there's a question in the chat. What do you do to get out of, is it stressful thoughts?
Stressful thoughts. That's where, one, setting really healthy boundaries for yourself is so incredibly important. So if you're really thinking about, I'm going to use the election because I feel like that's perfect for today, is that there's a lot of people who are really anxious about the election right now. So if you're really stressed out about the election, one of the things that I encourage people to do is to take a break from it. Take a break from the news, take a break from the media, and then stop and think about what made you do your last deep belly laugh so that it hurt. Who was there? Set some healthy boundaries for yourself, for people that you know can be helpful with it. And then find a way to refocus your brain. And so sometimes it can be watching a stupid movie on TV. Hallmark movies have started their Christmas marathon, so we do have that going for us now. But watch a movie, or again, for me, it's a puzzle activity or a puzzle every once in a while. If I'm stuck in a stressful thought, I'll go and I have to focus on my puzzle, and it'll start to bring me out of my stressful thinking. And so just really thinking about what can you do to distract yourself? What can you do to start to shift the focus? And again, I don't want to tell you exactly what you should do because it's so personal. If music, there are some people that music just brings them right out of it, and they can just really just get right into the music and specific songs. So I have some people that I know who just have playlists on their phones or on, I don't think anyone has an iPod anymore. Those were back in the day. But, just having a playlist of songs that you're just able to kind of get lost in and just have that as your go-to music, or to go out and go for a walk and to clear your head and clear your space. Always drinking twice as much water as you think you need, but making sure you're doing all of that. And then, yes, there we go, Liz, you got it. And again, I think that we're in a strange time. It's okay to set those limits for yourself. And I am right now telling you, it is okay to set limits for yourself. If you are stuck at home, it's okay to say, I need to put 30 minutes where I just go outside and I sit and not feel obligated to get schoolwork done or work done or housework done, or anything like that. It's okay just to say, I need to set this for myself and I need to do this for myself. And again, figure out what's going to be helpful. Knitting or crocheting, that actually, again, research has shown that can be really helpful for focusing. I think it's particularly crocheting. You have to do a lot of counting. And I say crocheting is really hard. So if you do that, good for you. But knitting is another one where it just kind of distracts you and has to put you into a point where you can take your brain somewhere else. But again, figure out what works for you that can really help to distract you, and then set aside time for it and make it okay. And actually, not only make it okay, make it a priority. It has to be a priority to take care of your mental health and to make sure that you're proactively doing it. And so, prioritize it, schedule it into your day. I don't know if that answered your question, Lauren. Okay. What are the most frequent stressors that people have? I think right now, it's changed a lot. And I think we can all acknowledge it's really changed a lot since March. And then it's changed a lot since just August. And then it's changing again now. I know that people are worried about Well, one is the chronic isolation that people are experiencing. There's a Dr. Noble. He's a Harvard medical professor. He oversees he has the Unlonely Project, which was really interesting. He came and spoke 2 years ago at our annual conference, which was very, I don't want to say foreshadowing, but he, through his research, found the impact of chronic loneliness and isolation has the same physical health impact on us as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so that is a huge impact on us and on our well-being, our physical well-being and our emotional and our mental health well-being. And so that's really important to keep in mind because we're seeing a lot of stressors related to that, a lot of stressors related to just the chronic isolation, the varying levels of comfort and discomfort people have with the current state of the pandemic and what's going on and the shutdown. Then there's economic stressors that go with it. There's social stressors with it. There's expectations. And it's really just people's roles. Like I said, the election, people who are really anxious about the election, even people who I know I've known for a long time who have never really been overly involved in politics now are expressing a high level of just, I don't know what's going to happen, and passion, which is great, but it's also, it's provoking a lot of anxiety, the constant bombardment of information that's coming in. We're coming into the holiday months. And I think everyone's feeling pretty stressed out about what are the holidays going to look like. To various degrees. Am I going to be able to see my loved ones? Am I not going to be able to see my loved ones? I was informed today for the first time ever in my life, I have to cook Thanksgiving dinner. And so now I have to figure out how to cook a turkey. That's a level of stress. And I kind of say that joking, but these are just all of the stressors that are piling up on people, one after another. And so just figuring that all out and navigating it and the different responsibilities. NPR put a study out that they said about a quarter of all working moms have left the workforce since the start of the pandemic. That's a huge amount of stress and pressure. If you have kids, it's just how are you managing that? I think I haven't talked to anyone who said that their house is cleaner since this started, which is shocking because we're all spending so much more time at home. And so just the pressure of keeping up with your house and, cleaning it and all of that sort of stuff. And so it's just building and building and building, and people are really starting to feel overwhelmed. And again, as we're spending more time at home, for some reason, everyone's forgetting to prioritize taking care of themselves and making sure that they're, doing stuff that does bring them joy, and they are focusing on talking to people that do bring them happiness and support. We've somehow shifted away from that. And so just really making sure that everyone's getting back to making sure that they're taking care of themselves and they're feeling comfort and all of that. It's a lot. And again, our brains, something to keep in mind is that our brains and our bodies are only wired to sustain stress for so long before it's kind of like a computer. Your brain and if your computer runs hot for too long, it's going to crash back down, right? And it goes to sleep and it resets itself and you lose everything that you left open from the day before. But our brains and our bodies are the same things. They can only run at an elevated level for so long before it's going to say, nope, I can't do this. And I need to, overload and crash. Exactly, Lauren. And that's what a lot of people are experiencing right now. And it's really important that to a certain extent, you allow your body to crash. If your body needs to sleep, then let your body sleep. If your body needs a day of just laying on the couch and watching Hallmark movies, lay on the couch and watch Hallmark movies. And just be mindful of that and allow that and, allow yourself the ability to take care of it. Yeah, I think you started to unmute yourself and I went on a tangent. I'm sorry.
One thing I've seen in my neighborhood, more people have gotten puppies, pets, they're out walking them. And I know our local animal shelter is looking for volunteers to come walk dogs. And it's that thing about getting out of yourself and maybe taking on hobbies or doing something for a neighbor, going to the store, getting groceries for them, something that is helping other people. And sometimes that seems to be
Mm,
helpful when
yeah.
I'm feeling stressed out. If I stop maybe focusing on me so much and look at someone else, like, an elderly neighbor who can't get out and doing things like that, that seems to help a bit sometimes.
That's a big thing that people are starting to do now is what can I do to help others?
Mhm.
And sometimes I throw it out there and sometimes I don't because depending on who it is, I see a lot of people who throw themselves into helping other people as a way to not make or making sure that they're really taking care of themselves too. And so I always say you can't they tell you this on the airplane. If the air mask comes down, make sure you put yours on first before you put on anyone else's. So always make sure you put your air mask on first and then, in my case, pick your favorite kid and then put theirs on first. That's why I travel with my husband usually. But you know what I'm saying? Like you want to make sure that you put yours on first. And so if helping other people is something that brings you joy, then fantastic. But don't feel like you have to do it at the detriment of yourself. You've got enough stuff going on. It's okay to be selfish right now. But animal shelters are huge because you can go and you can love on animals and you can snuggle them and you can get all of the joy from them and then you can leave them there. And so, and I say that because my children conned me into getting a puppy. And so I had a puppy for the last month in my house. So don't commit unless you're really ready for it. Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup exactly. And so if helping others is something that brings you joy, absolutely do it. If you're going to do the crocheting or you're going to do the knitting, find ways that you can donate it to a local shelter. You can, my favorite that I saw was the sweetest is we had someone in our town who made a whole bunch of hats and scarves and mittens and just posted it up around the town general store so that you could just go and take what you wanted and different sizes and different colors and stuff like that. So people could just go and take what they wanted. And just stuff like that I think is really sweet. The bear hunt, they did it early on where everyone put up bears so that the kids could drive around and like try and spot like the bears around and everything. Um, so, all right. So Liz just sent me biggest stressor is time management and lack of sleep due to PTSD related stress. So this is a time that again, setting a schedule and setting a routine is really important. This is also a time where we want to make sure that you are prioritizing one, what you need, and being mindful of um, feeling overwhelmed. And I actually am really encouraging people, particularly if you are going to school from home and you are working from home, and if you have kids and they're at home, set a schedule, man. Have a structured schedule because as we get more stressed, we're going to leave that part of our brain. And so try to put as much structure as in place as possible. And when you are doing that, I am not talking about the fact that you are working from 9 to 5 every single day. And then from 5 to 7, you are on your online classes. And then from 7 to 9, you are cleaning your house and you are doing your dishes and you are doing all of these sort of things. I'm saying that from, from 7 to 8 every single morning, you sit and drink your coffee and watch the Today Show. Put that into your schedule. And then from 9 to 10 at night, it's one of your favorite shows on TV, or that's when it's your Netflix time. And so you get on to although Hulu, I like Hulu better. It's your Hulu time. And so you get on to Hulu and you watch your Hulu. And so starting to put some structure in place with that. I think it's also really important that you, again, you have those selfish moments and you make a focus on saying, I need to take care of myself, and so I'm going to structure in. If I need to see a counselor, this is one of the things that if you can find someone that you can click with and you can connect with and you can really be able to have that conversation with, really seek it out. A lot of individuals now are doing treatment online. They're doing it via Zoom, and so there's that option, or they have it in person. If you are going to seek out treatment, I always throw this out there. If you have never sought therapy or if you never sought treatment in any ways, um, this is like any other relationship you have in your life. Some people you click with and some people you don't. I don't joke. I think I'm positively delightful. However, I am not everyone's cup of tea. I am not what everyone wants to go and see for a therapist, and that's okay. So if and when you're going to seek out treatment of some sort, I really encourage you to figure out who that person is. A lot of times they'll have online profiles and they'll write about what their specialties are and what their work histories are, but also you get a feel for their personality. And so doing that and getting to know them is so incredibly beneficial so you can have that. And so really make an effort for that. So putting that structure, one of the big things, turn off media and social media if you're having sleep related stress. Turn everything off an hour before you go to bed. And then you find a way to read a book or do some sort of hobby or just something to distract you and let your brain start to go away in a different direction and be distracted before then. Guided meditations can be really helpful during that too, because again, it kind of brings your brain where it is. It can be hard though to sit and to be stressed out because you have so much stuff going on, and to sit and to be there and to be present. And so the first few times people try things, it may not seem like it works. But actually it's neurons that fire together, wire together. We make paths in our brains. It takes 21 days or 21 times of consistently doing something for a new path to form in our brain. And it's not going to be the strongest path in the world. And that's really important to keep in mind is that it's going to be kind of like a little weaker, path that you might stumble with, just like we would in the woods, where our brains are going to go towards the really well-worn path, even if it's not going in the greatest direction. And so it's consistently practicing and consistently doing the meditation or deep breathing or just other coping skills that you may take up before it starts to build those paths and to make them a little bit stronger and easier to do. But starting to build those routines in. And that's why I say sometimes it can be helpful to actually write it down and have a set schedule for it. Because again, it starts to just build it in and make it a little bit easier for you to say, well, I wrote it down. Well, first of all, I wrote it down. It's on it for me. It's checklist. It's on my checklist, and so I have to do it. And then on top of it, it's reminding yourself and it's giving yourself permission, and then it's putting that structure in place because you're not necessarily in the part of your brain where it's going to be as easy to make that structure if you're escalated or if you're stressed. What resources are out there for people without health insurance and those who cannot afford to pay for therapy? So one, we have a helpline. We have a lovely individual who answers the phone in our helpline. It's 622-5767, and then you press 1. You'll get our lovely individual who answers the helpline Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. They really help to locate resources in different parts of the state. There is also a number of resources. One, we have a clinician match program, so we can get short-term, like a couple of sessions. We have clinicians who have volunteered their time throughout the pandemic. So we have that short-term. The other thing to keep in mind is that a lot of places will have free care applications that are there and that are available for your reduced care. And so for some larger agencies or some larger hospitals, depending if there's a hospital, usually they'll have that. But different services and resources. And so we can definitely help with that on the helpline, or if you just go on, like Alice, I think, has a hospital, right? I think, but okay, I'm just using that as an example. But like here in Augusta, Maine General has its Maine General Hospital, and so you can go on and they have an application you can go on, print off, and then fill out. And so a lot of agencies and entities have that too, where it's either free or reduced care. And again, we can help to support you in locating that throughout your area. What do you think about online counseling? So I think it's really, we talk a lot about evidence-based. We have evidence-based treatment where it is types of treatment and modalities of treatment that we know research has told us is really effective in helping specific diagnoses. One of the greatest predictors of your success in treatment, though, is nothing to do with the method of treatment that they're providing, but it's the relationship that you have with your provider, which I think is really impactful. I think it's like 60% of your success in treatment is your relationship with them. So there are pros and cons to it. We're finding, there's certain types of treatment that you can't necessarily provide online. But for the most part, if you find someone that's a good match for you and you're open, one of the big things is you're open and you're willing and you're trusting what they're saying to you and you're willing to try it out, it can be really helpful, and it can be really powerful. We're all trying to adapt to this modern world. If you are not an online kind of person, then it's not going to be as impactful. Oh, yeah. It can be really helpful. And so I don't mean to put you on the spot, but online treatment can be really helpful in the fact it helps you balance your schedule. It can help you to, you don't have to worry about transportation. That's one of the big barriers we see to treatment here in the state of Maine is the fact we don't have public transportation systems. So it eliminates all of those barriers. But again, my biggest thing that I always push is I don't care what type of treatment you get, make sure you have a good working relationship with the person. They're there working for you. And again, you have to be able to trust them and you have to be able to click and connect with them. So if that's not happening, think about either a different modality or a different person. It's okay to have those conversations and say, I don't think we're a good match.
And does anyone else have any other questions or comments for Hannah? Okay. Well, if
So
everyone is good and the questions have all been answered, Hannah, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for meeting with us. We will share the links on our library pages, and I know many of our students and staff and faculty will look at these and get a lot of good ideas. And this was excellent information, and we really appreciate your time today.
well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. And please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything that we can offer for support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone, for joining us.